Viewer beware. Hey everybody, don't mind me. Welcome back to Viewer Beware. It's the internet's favorite one-stop shop for going at Goosebumps episodes. I forgot the intro.
Idiot.
What? Anyway, tonight we're watching The Scarecrow Walks at Midnight, and that's a pretty special episode to me because I have a little bit of history with it. So, the very first horror movie that I remember watching that scared the pants off me, that's a weird way to say that, but it did. It was Pumpkinhead. I watched it on an AMC Fear Fest, and as a little Midwestern rural America boy living sandwiched in between cornfields, it spoke to me because, you know, corn is one thing, but something inside the corn, the whole thing. Like, I can do a corn maze. I'm not one to be befuddled by grain, but once you drop a monster in there, I'm tapping out. Can't do it. And there's a lot of similarities between Pumpkinhead and tonight's episode. There's monsters that are arisen for a vengeful purpose. Farmland. Middle America heartland farmland.
Get to the point.
Are you guys hearing this? Anyway, The Scarecrow Walks at Midnight is the story about two kids, Jody and Mark, that visit their grandparents, but they quickly notice things aren't right. Sure, we've seen it before, but have we seen it with shaman hillbillies with magic spellbooks? I don't think so. So, everybody crack them corn-based beverages open. Let's go down on the farm with Scarecrow Walks at Midnight. We begin in a classic country cornfield with our two heroes Jody and Mark visiting their grandparents' farm. The kids ask about all of the fun things they can do this summer, like catching frogs, before they get interrupted.
I like those frogs. You shouldn't catch them, because if you do, the scarecrows might just end up catching you.
That's the kinda slow farmhand Stanley. Stanley believes in living scarecrows. That night, the kids are getting ready for bed, still excited for all of the summer fun, but meanwhile, the grandparents are freaking out.
Are you sure you locked the doors?
Told you, they're locked.
The windows? Did you bolt them shut?
It seems they too are afraid of walking scarecrows, and for good reason. The next morning looks like something right out of a Folgers commercial. But the kids are beyond disappointed when they miss out on world-famous chocolate chip pancakes and instead get cornflakes, Stanley's favorite. Also, there's another kid here, Stanley's son Styx, played by Chris Limchi, who you may remember from Final Destination 3. After breakfast, the kids go outside to play catch before Mark launches the ball into the cornfield, forcing Jody to retrieve it. After Jody drags ass to get the ball, Mark gets it for her, but soon after stumbles across a particularly creepy scarecrow. And an even creepier guy.
What you doing?
Oh, hi, Stanley.
A scarecrow walks at midnight.
Stanley claims he made the scarecrow walk, whatever that means. While Mark and Jody are trying to reassure the half-wit that scarecrows aren't real people, Styx plays a harmless prank, but he quickly gives them a serious warning.
Come on, Jody.
Hey, this isn't a place for city kids. You two should have never come out here.
That night, Jody and Mark are commenting about how different the farm feels this summer before Mark makes a startling discovery.
Jody.
But before Jody can come by and confirm, they quickly resume their position. Jody again reaffirms that Stanley is just slow and nonsensical. The next day, Jody is walking through the cornfields because what else are you gonna do? Before she notices that a scarecrow is off its perch. Deciding to exit the situation before it gets any weirder, she walks into the barn where she gets jump scared by Styx.
Hey!
But Jody has had enough of Styx' shit and tells him off before leaving him alone at the barn. That night the kids have cherry pie for dessert, despite always having apple. But cherry just so happens to be Stanley's favorite. What a coincidence. The kids want their grandpa to tell them a classic scary story, but Stanley cuts them off, saying he doesn't like them. So Grandpa just shuts the hell up. That night, Jody has a nightmare where her grandparents are creepy scarecrows somehow, but just kinda shrugs it off. Thinks it's just to fill time. The next day, the kids are riding their bikes in the cornfield because what else are you gonna do? Before Scarecrow jumps out and tackles Jody. Despite the Scarecrow obviously moving on its own to assume a full mount earlier, Jody claims it was just Sticks throwing a Scarecrow at them and plans a revenge prank. That night, Jody dresses Mark as a Scarecrow and leaves him in the field as she plans to lead Sticks to the scare zone. But before she can get to him, it looks like Mark can't follow simple instructions. Or I guess it's not Mark. But Sticks is unfazed and just pelts the headless Scarecrow with his patented whoop-ass rocks until it runs away. Sticks brings Jody inside his trailer to explain the situation.
What's going on? Who was that?
A couple months ago, my dad, he found this book full of spells. He thought it'd be cool if the Scarecrows were alive so they could really keep the birds off the crops. That way, he wouldn't have to work so hard. Yeah, well, they came alive all right. Except it wasn't the crows they wanted to scare.
Sure, Magic Hillbilly makes total sense, and we don't have to question it any further. It turns out Stanley is still reading out of that there dang old spell book, and the Scarecrows won't leave him be. Mark decides this is the perfect chance to scare, because for some reason he isn't already keyed in on the magic book angle. Stanley gets spooked and runs off to read some more spells, but accidentally wakes up all of the Scarecrows instead of putting them all to sleep.
Oh, no. No, Dad, you read the wrong chant. This is the one that makes them wake up.
The kids and old man run to the barn, dodging walking Scarecrows the whole way. Sticks is the only one that seems to have his wits about him, but that doesn't last long as they quickly get swarmed.
Okay, they're gone.
But with some quick thinking, Mark fires up the thresher and rips all the Scarecrows to bits. The next day, the grandparents are glad their dull farmhand isn't threatening them anymore, before he finds a random spell page on the ground and just reads it for the heck of it.
What was that? Stanley, what are you reading?
Yeah, it's good, right? So, the Thresher is coming to the grandparents' house. It's apparently alive through some sort of supernatural occurrence. We can just go ahead and assume that the grandparents' house is completely wiped out because nothing's stopping that Thresher. It's one thing to have, frail Scarecrow arms banging on the windows, but a Thresher? Come on, man. You're out one house. You gotta live in the barn now. As with all episodes, there are some changes from the book, but they're pretty minor in this case. So, the biggest change was when Stanley brings all of the Scarecrows to life when he gets scared. In the book, he actually did that because he was angry. So that kind of changes the intention that he had there. But they kind of washed that away because he's like Simple Jack, so nobody really held it against him.
You are like Simple Jack.
This guy, man. Also, another change is when they get cornered in the barn, Sticks just sets all of the Scarecrows on fire. So Mark doesn't really do anything in the original story, so they kind of wanted to spice him up a little bit in the episode version, just to have a reason for him to be there. With that being said, this is still a terrifying episode. The image of those Scarecrows pounding on the windows, I know when people talk about Salem's Lot and the boy scratching at the window to come in, they're like, that's the most terrifying thing in existence. That's how I felt when I was a young boy, seeing the Scarecrows in the windows banging to get in. Terrifying. It stuck with me for years. I still won't go near a Scarecrow. Also, the entire direction of this episode as a whole, it feels much, much more horror movie than it does kids show. And you can tell there's a distinct difference. Some episodes clearly feels like the director knows this is just for kids. Don't have to take it too seriously. And this one, they're like, a few tweaks here and there, sort of like Werewolf of Fever Swamp. A few tweaks here and there. This could be a legitimate, Silver Bullet style horror movie that happens to have kids in it. And really, you can't get much better than that. I mean, that's what I live for. That's my zone. Kids' TV shows that have an air of danger and mystery, That's what we need these days. I mean, Bluey is nice and all, but come on now. We need something with a little bit more teeth on it. Something like scary. Give me something spooky. Like if Wizards of Waverly Place had like a human sacrifice in it. Give me that. Anyway, my hands are tied here. I am forced to give this episode a 5 bumps out of 5 bumps. You need to check it out. It is top-notch, primo quality stuff. So there you have it. Viewer beware. You're in for a scare when you watch Scarecrow Walks at midnight. And I'll see you guys next time. Keep tuning into the channel. I really appreciate everybody coming around and checking these out. I am having fun going through the series.
Bye-bye.
A scarecrow walks at midnight.
Stanley, are you confused again?
No.